is the 50th anniversary of Chick-Fil-A and the Dwarf House and Dad's operation. It also inaugurates our expansion internationally. Give me a C. C. Give me F. F. Give me A. A. What does that stand for? Chick-fil-A. Give yourself a hand. Very good.
We wanted to commemorate this special long-term relationship with this very, very special man. And to do so, we had commissioned Truett Cathy's own 6-pack of Coca-Cola. Truett's picture on the bottles.
Someone told me yesterday, if you let me have some of those bottles, I can sell those for $20 a piece. And I said, well, take them all.
The story hasn't been written yet on Truett Cathy. Whatever you write today is not going to include the good works that he's going to be doing tomorrow.
Ready for a big day?
Ready.
Good. It's going to be a good one. We're on our way to the Dwarf House, and before we get to the Dwarf House, share with the group, if you would, a little bit about your personal story.
I've already violated rule number 1 is to stay in uniform, and I don't have a name tag on me. But my name is Truett Cathy. My initials are TC, and some claim that stands for tough chicken. But my friends call me Truett, my acquaintances call me Mr. Cathy, and my enemies got better names to call me. I was born in Eatonton, Georgia. That's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Atlanta. And born back in 1921.
And it was quite a struggle. It was a time that I remember one time going to the grocery store with a list of groceries to get. Back then you could charge your groceries. And to have to come back home and tell my mom that we couldn't get any more groceries until the bills were paid.
We were poor, but everybody else we knew were poor. That day and time, we didn't have the welfare system.
We would wear shoes till the holes in it, putting cardboard inside your shoes to keep your foot from being exposed to the dirt or the concrete.
If you ate, you worked for it. No working, no eating. And so everybody had to try to do everything you could do to make a nickel.
We moved to Atlanta because of the fact it was either that or stay there on the farm and perish. But it was there that I was brought up to learn to shuck corn and shell peas and wash dirty dishes. This boarding house where we would take in boarders, furnish not a room but a bed in a room, and 2 meals a day, and if I remember correctly, it was $7 a week that we charged.
Well, we were just in Atlanta a few weeks when we went to live with them. And Truett was 3. He was the sweetest little baby and boy I ever saw. And he couldn't talk.
I can remember oftentimes him sitting me on his knee and trying to get me to say "sick'em." That was his favorite word because best I could do was "thick'em."
And he'd tell me a big story and I didn't know a word he said. And it would almost break his heart because he couldn't make me understand.
My name when I started to school was not Truett Cathy, but it was Ue'a'i. That was the best I could do with the name. So finally I smartened up, got my mom printed my name on a card, and I keep that with me. And when different people asked me my name, I would just present that card. My dad was very firm, very demanding individual, and I guess he never got over the depression that he endured, losing everything that he had.
Daddy was not one of the type that would, he thought he'd lose his manhood if he paid a woman a compliment, and especially Mother.
My daddy carried me to the cemetery one day and told me that's where Santa Claus was buried, not to expect anything for Christmas. He had died. He actually didn't do that, but I've heard that maybe fathers do that to the kids.
Truett is really his mother in a lot of ways.
She was a very loving, caring individual.
He'd sit next to Mother and he'd take her little earlobes and he'd pull on. That was his way of loving her.
She was had a lot of faith, and she practiced the fact that, you know, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord.
If we didn't have enough in the house to eat, she'd say, well, listen, God feeds the birds of the field, and he's not going to let us go.
So she definitely had a positive influence on my life.
Back then, you could buy Coke 6 for a quarter. And so I thought to myself, I accumulated 6 bottles and a quarter that I could buy those Cokes, sell them around to my neighbors.
We'd go up down the street trying to sell Cokes for a nickel apiece. If sold 6, I'd recognize a 5-cent profit.
It was a neighbor right across the street. Traditionally, she would come out early morning with a Coke in her hand and sit in that rocking chair and rock for the morning. So she was my target market there to approach her by buying those Cokes from me.
My mom helped me build a little stand out there in the front yard. And we was able to flag down the Coke truck, and he'd give you signs from the Coca-Cola company to put around on your little homemade stand there. And we'd sell a whole case of Coca-Colas, 24 Cokes. So when you sell 24 Cokes for 5 cents a piece, and you paid 80 cents for them, you'd recognize a 40-cent profit.
Well, I met Truett in the early 1930s. We were both working for the newspaper.
And that 7 years was far more valuable to me than a degree from Harvard, because I learned the importance of taking care of that customer. I was very anxious to take care of that customer. If they wanted the paper put behind the screen door, keep the dog from tearing it up, I'd do that. I'd put it up on the in a rocking chair if the people were old and couldn't bend over. Today, there's a challenge for me that I find my paper. Oftentimes, I'm not there with the flashlight trying to find my paper because it's slung out of an automobile going 50, 60 miles an hour.
As newspaper carriers, had competition in those days.
We used to have a competitive paper in the morning and a competitive paper in the afternoon. And so it was necessary for you to go out and get those people to change over from one newspaper to another. It took a lot of salesmanship.
Truett had enough new subscribers to win a trip, and I had enough. And the last week came along, and nobody from our group seemed to be eligible for the cruise trip. Well, Truett got several of us together and said, well, let's give our new subscribers over to Ben and let him turn them in. And as it turned out, Ben won the cruise trip.
It was Truett and Ben. Truett and Ben. Some people thought it was one name. They were just real close.
When I was drafted, it wasn't so bad. I had a job sitting at a desk, because I tell my kids I won the war fighting a typewriter. I was stationed at the Atlanta Ordnance Depot, and I would go and hitchhike a ride. I would come home, and I'd get to go down there on Friday, and I could stay till Sunday night. My mother had appendicitis, and the doctor diagnosed it as indigestion. And they prescribed medicine for indigestion. Peritonitis had set in, and when we got her to the hospital, she was just about too far gone to do anything for her, and she did pass away. Very loving individual. As I remarked, and my mother in the casket there, that is it was the first time that I remember seeing her with the eyes closed. because she was the last one to go to bed, the first one to get up.
If my mother didn't make it to heaven, we might as well quit trying.
Dad, come over here if you would. Talk about this particular site back in 1946, because this is where it all got started right here.
That's right. This original dwarf grill has been the backbone of the development of Chick-Fil-A because it had grown to have substantial income coming to me.
My brother and I pooled our resources, and we came up with $4,000, and we accomplished this by selling that used automobile that I had. And so we were able to get a loan for $6,600. And with $10,600 that we thought we could purchase, you know, any part of the world that you wanted. And the Ford Motor Plant was the first major industry to come into being after World War II. And we thought this might be a good area.
When they did start to work on the place, well, Ben and Truett got out there and they dug the ditches for the plumbers, and they did everything they could do to help cut down on the expense.
Well, quite a few people I recall told him, Truett, this is the wrong time to go in business. You can't get meat, everything is rationed, this is just post-war, World War II situation. And I said, you're just fighting a losing battle to try to start at this time.
And I believe he had 8 stools and about 6 booths. And that was the size of the building back then. And that's where we first became acquainted with him. Really the first good fast food place in the area.
In 1948, my first date was, we went to Chick-Fil-A because, you know, we were high school kids. Yeah. But yeah, long time, it really was. When he used to be in there working, it was nice to see him work. He really used to work all the time.
Well, I probably flipped a lot of eggs for you and hamburgers as well.
Sure did, and it's still just as good today as it was then, even better.
I was afraid the man was going bankrupt because people would come in that he knew and said, well, you know, it's on the house, glad to see you. It was just, he considered a customer as a friend always.
As I was growing up and I started putting in my time at the Dwarf House, I'd have employees pull me off to the side and say, I just want to tell you what your dad did for me.
My first encounter with Truett Cathy came when I was about 12 years old. We shook hands. It was a friendly handshake, and that warmth made a difference in my life. So I wound up working for him, and I was working and assisting with the family, and I was about to begin my senior year in high school. Decided that I was going to quit school. He told my dad that he felt that I had potential and that if I were to stop at that point, I could probably never achieve that may be possible. So Dad agreed.
With the understanding that Eddie would give half of his income to the family and he'd keep half of his income for his education. I
realized that I did not have enough to pay my first year's tuition. And Mr. Cathy asked what the tuition was to be, and the next day or so, that was a check. He was not wealthy by any means, but he shared. He shared. I did not have the money to go on to college. I did not have the clothes to wear to school. I did not have transportation on weekends. I could not have done any of those things had it not been for him. He did it because he may have seen in some guy that maybe he had something to offer, and he gave.
My decision to close on Sunday came the first week it was in business. I was thoroughly exhausted, and I had to make a decision. I needed that day. I wanted to preserve that day. Sunday is for the Lord's Day.
And we haven't been open on Sunday for 50 years and don't intend to change that policy.
And I gotta tell you, the only 2 things I don't like about Sundays is I have to go to work on Monday and Chick-Fil-A is closed.
Well, we'd say if you just eat with us 6 days a week, we'll let you eat somewhere else on Sunday, okay?
Dad could not accomplish
what he's been able to do if it was not for my mom.
I met my wife, Jeanette, at age 8. She lived second door up from me. And so she was brought up in just a similar circumstances that I was. I'd like to keep her in sight. If she was going to be there, I'd be sure to be around.
I knew the Cathys when we were small. Then I didn't see him again until I guess I was about 23 years old.
During our courtship, and sometime it'd be 9 or 10 o'clock at night before I could go by and pick her up. We'd go to a late movie. And she used to wake me up sitting beside her there at the movie. I was so dead tired that I would fall asleep. And that's not the way to impress girls, you know.
I remember her saying that she wanted the person that she married to come up to her riding a white horse. And this happened after her and Dad had already been married. We'd moved down to the farm, and she finally saw her dream come true. She did see him ride up to her riding on a white horse.
I think it was frustrating to Jeanette when I came home after working hard all day and all the problems that existed during the day, that she was ready for some relief and expected me to take over the responsibility of the children. Well, I was ready to relax.
She was riding, so I remember that same white horse, and she fell off and broke her leg, and that was very discouraging for her because I think the three of us were very young, and she had to take care of all of us, and Dad was still putting his long hours in, and he wasn't about to adjust, I think, his work schedule for her having that accident.
Coming up in hard times, he was like a lot of people of that time. You only knew work.
Mom, whenever I saw her, we remember waiting for Daddy to come home to eat with us at the table or whatever. She never complained about his long hours. I just remember her always giving us encouraging words that your dad's busy and this is important work that he's about.
I think Jeanette deserves just as much credit as he does.
We tend to think that life is nothing but a series of wonderful decisions where we have this infinite wisdom and everything goes smoothly and flawlessly forward. But I would share with you the truth of the matter is there have been a lot of heartaches and disappointments and traumatic things that have taken place that have been real turning points for the business. Dad?
Ben was a very handsome guy. He had wavy hair, and he was tall, and I guess he was probably more outgoing. Well, he was, in fact, more outgoing than I was.
They were individuals. You know, they both didn't think alike, which is good. A lot of times your combination is good. And they both were hard workers.
I can remember very well that him writing up the daily report sheet on 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, closing out sales at 2 o'clock, writing the deposit slip, and leaving with my older brother to go over to the airport and rent a plane with 2 other guys and to go to an air show up in Chattanooga. And I don't think we'll ever know which one was piloting the plane because both of them, my brothers, had pilot license. And so when they gunned the motor, it killed the motor and it just fell flat like a pancake and burst into flames. But I guess the worst time, you know, to open up Monday morning with that being and seeing where he made out his daily report sheet at 2 o'clock on Saturday in good health, to realize, you know, he wouldn't be back. My dad used to come down to the Dwarf House and eat with us. He was always thinking that we're going to have another depression. And I bought a farm down in Clayton County that I paid $29,000 for. Now he was bitterly opposed to that. A depression is coming, and to borrow the money to go down and purchase a $29,000 farm It was certainly unwise to do that. Well, it turned out to be probably the best decision I ever made. It was there that I have been able to raise 3 children, and have enjoyed it myself.
We've eaten thousands of meals in the old Wharf House in Havel. We've been remodeled a couple of times now, and burned once and remodeled again, and then he opened up in Forest Park, where we live.
I was wakened one morning about 2 o'clock in the morning to be told that my restaurant in Forest Park was afire.
It had really gutted the restaurant. I didn't have but $25,000 worth of insurance on the building and equipment, whole works, which was not near enough to cover the damage.
2 days later, I was passing some blood, and I went to the doctor and said, well, you got some internal bleeding, and we're going to have to go in there and operate on you, and you better, I said, well, I got to rebuild a restaurant. So, well, you better forget about that restaurant and take care of Truett Cathy.
It was polyps in my colon.
He was at death's door several times because he had the wrong doctor.
6 months later, a re-examination to find that those polyps had reoccurred. I remember so very well my wife driving me out the driveway of that farm and leaving those 3 little children there. What does a man gain if he gains the whole world and lose those things? It's precious to him. Things that you can't measure in dollars and cents. And when you have little kids and your wife praying for you about, you really realize you don't have any problem that you don't have that you can't handle. I did get my other restaurant built and started, and I went to totally self-service.
He says it's a new venture, we're going to try it, we're going to try to make it work.
It wasn't an hour after I opened up till suddenly I realized I made a mistake.
We'd already spoiled our customers there. They were like a family, like a big extended family.
We want to have China cups, and we would like to get refills on our coffee, and we don't like this self-service deal. I had a $90,000 note at the bank there, and I never had borrowed that much money before.
I was weary and tired and felt defeated at the time.
So 3 months later, I leased this building out to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I don't think I would have ever developed Chick-Fil-A if I'd had 2 restaurants.
We'd already experimented on this chicken sandwich, but it gave me an opportunity to further develop it.
Mother always would salt and pepper the chicken and put it in the refrigerator overnight. She never just served the chicken then. And so that got him onto the marinating, see.
I guess I had originally 20 different seasons in there. I wanted to make it as complicated as possible so people wouldn't be able to duplicate it very easily.
Now, the National Restaurant Association each year sponsors contests for various menu items. And back in the early 60s, they had a contest for sandwiches. And Truett prepared the Chick-fil-A sandwich and entered it in the National Restaurant Association contest, fully expecting that he would win first prize. But he didn't get first place. And he didn't get second place. As a matter of fact, he didn't even get mentioned. But you know, as I've thought about this, I have often wondered, for those inventors of those other sandwiches, what kind of recognition and reward do you think they gained from their creation? I bet it wouldn't compare with what's happened with Chick-fil-A to create a $2 billion segment in the industry. Truett, take heart. You won that contest.
People tell me, Truett, there's nothing so great about taking the bone off the chicken breast and putting it in between 2 pieces of bread and serving it.
And I said, I realized that, a simple idea, and that's the reason I was able to do this, because it was so simple. Originally, we did go into other restaurants with Chick-fil-A because I didn't want the responsibility of another restaurant. But it was frustrating to go in other restaurants and see that you had no control.
He saw that he couldn't protect the quality that way, and as he looked around for another way to sell Chick-fil-A, he decided to go into Greenbrier Mall with the first shopping center store.
I had a gift shop in Greenbrier Mall, the first enclosed mall in Atlanta. And so Truett's little brain had been running double time, and he came out and said, Gladys, what do you think about putting a Chick-fil-A place out here?
384 square feet there at Greenbrier Mall, literally a hole in the wall.
Place took off with a bang. And so he was the beginning of food in the malls.
The thing that really fascinated me about what Truett was doing with Chick-fil-A was that I saw here the potential for a whole new chain of restaurants.
Well, we were approached by the Morrison's cafeteria people, and we sat down and did a little serious talking about it, and that was after they had opened the first restaurant.
And the deal was that they would pay him $1 million, but he had to stay until 50 restaurants were built or until 5 years passed.
Truett asked me, if I go with this deal, do you want to come to work for me and be in charge of design and construction? And I said, no, I really don't want to work for Morrison's, but if you ever decide to do this on your own, I might be interested in coming to work with you.
And I did make a decision to go on my own.
I came to the decision with my wife that I would not come to work for Truett.
Because if I went to work for Truett, Truett wouldn't let me do anything. Truett would make all the decisions, and it would be my hands doing the working, but his mind doing all the thinking.
And I went to visit Truett one day with another revision of the plans for Oglethorpe Mall. And when I got there, he said, I need a decision from you. Are you going to come to work for me or not? And I said, well, Truett, let's look at the plan first, and then we'll talk about it. And he said to me, this is typical Truett Cathy now. What do you think about what you've drawn? And I said, Truett, this is it. I'm convinced we do it like this, and we've got this thing right. And he asked me, are you sure? Truett likes to challenge you like that. And I said, I'm positive this is it, Truett. And as I was rolling the rubber band off of that set of drawings, getting ready to open them up for him, he said, okay, that's what we'll do.
As I opened them out, he said, now, are you going to come to work for me or not? And I said, yes. That was not the decision I expected to make, and I went home, and I had a hard time explaining that to my wife.
Every restaurant that we designed in the beginning, Truett wanted to do it differently. He wanted a different design for each one because he was having fun with it. And I was trying to get him to do them all the same so we could duplicate them.
They would not let food come in malls.
They had these visions of these greasy odors, half-eaten bones, and dirty napkins in all of their trash bins. So when we went to talk to developers about a Chick-fil-A location, they pretty much laughed us off.
But they did come to the conclusion that if people left their mall to go and eat, they'd likely not come back.
And every time I'd go to see them, they'd say, Chicken Little is here again.
We had lots of problems. We didn't know how to build stores. We didn't know how to do business in Florida. We didn't know how to do business in Texas, and we had to deal with hurricanes.
I probably would never start in the restaurant business had I realized all the obstacles that was going to come about.
We had a lot of learning to do and a lot of discouragement in that learning, but we never had any idea of giving up. Truett's not the kind of person who gives up.
I have a picture on my wall that I received from my daughter. The picture is a mountain climber climbing a mountain. He had the proper attire, he had a safety rope on, and he was climbing a mountainside there with the caption of it, no goal is too high if we climb with care and confidence. That's been kind of our philosophy at Chick-fil-A.
I believe that one can achieve most anything if they really want to. May I officially present to you this work of art.
This sculpture is representative of the commitment that Chick-fil-A makes to the city of Atlanta and to the thousands of young people that work in the Chick-Fil-A restaurants around this country.
The scholarship program was built around the concept if they work with Chick-fil-A for 2 years and average 20 hours a week over a 2-year period of time, then we would present a $1,000 scholarship to them. And so we wanted to commemorate that 10,000th scholarship recipient. So it's great to be able to use the business as an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people.
On behalf of the people of Atlanta, we humbly accept this sculpture and hope that it will lead many who cross under to success through education.
I got one of Truett Cathy's books, took it home to try to find insight into his life. I started reading it and I couldn't set the book down. He's a very unique individual that is very concerned with humanity as a whole. That's what I was trying to portray here, just a total commitment to help those less fortunate than himself.
Always lived in Georgia. Always heard about Berry College and Martha Berry and the fine reputation that it enjoyed, but never visited the campus until I was invited to come up. We were amazed at the beautiful chapel sitting there on the mountainside and this beautiful acres here that they call the mountain campus. The president of the college shared with me the action that the trustees had taken to close what was known as Academy, which is a private school from 8th through the 12th grade. Said, could you give me any ideas of what to use the facility for?
He told her, you just turn this property over to me and let me take it.
So we came up with this name WinShape, shaping individuals to be winners.
And I'll bring students in here. We'll have scholarships and you can fund half of it and I'll fund half of it. And then we'll have a summer camp. And we'll build a couple of foster homes up here. And he took us up and he showed us around and told us all of his dreams. And I turned to one of the other guys with us and I said, I cannot see this. What this looks like to me is a big black hole that could never be filled with money, no matter how much we tried to throw into it. Well, shows you how much I know. It's been very successful. And it hasn't turned out to be a big black hole, but it has been a real blessing to a lot of folks.
Is everybody happy?
The seminars are absolutely fantastic. The younger people just coming on do not realize how funny Truett Cathy is. God just put so much into that man.
How many of you have been mopeding? How many have been separated from your mopeding yourself out there on the road?
When I was a kid, about the only thing I had to play with was a loose tooth. And the loose tooth wasn't mine, it was my brother's.
I remember in the 70s, I asked him, I said, Truett, why do you keep doing this? You don't need the money. Why do you want to continue to grow? And he looked at me and smiled and said, the more I grow, the more people I get to meet and the more influence I can be. And that's when I realized the money's a byproduct of what he's doing with the company. He just loves people.
So many of us are geared toward giving our attention to the people who have power and have position and from whom we can get something ourselves. Truett has the ability to give himself to people from whom he can get nothing except their love.
Now, how fast you want to go?
How fast does it go?
How fast will it go? You want to go as fast as it'll go?
Yes, sir.
Truett's not in the chicken business anymore. He left the chicken business several years ago. He's in children's business now.
They used to ask me in the restaurant business, you know, how much would you take for this restaurant? And I said, well, if you ask me on the right day, I'll just give it to you. And foster home the same way, you know, when you have a lot of problems, I ask myself, why, you know, encourage more problems? But there's enough rewards out there to try to open a new home every year.
Have a good day in school.
Yes, sir.
Get our heads together here. Get your head on in here. Let's see if we hear anything.
Truett has taken tremendous amount of time to spend with young people whose lives have been almost at times devastated by particularly dysfunctional family situations.
And there are times where you wish that there weren't 13 brothers and sisters. But that's only when it's really, really loud and everybody's talking at one time and you're trying to say something and everybody tries to talk at once.
We want to make them feel like they're our children, we're their parents, and we want to make this a permanent family for them.
This is definitely my family. I call them Mom and Dad, and every child that lives in this home is my brother and my sister.
When he tells a child, for example, I'll be your grandfather. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to flow in that role for you. I think that is a commitment that he takes tremendously serious.
This is my adopted granddaddy right here.
I am his legal guardian. I can spank this one if I want to, right? If he does ever should do anything wrong.
I'm trying to get bigger than him, though. So.
He's been a real, not only grandfather, but a real father to a lot of young people.
Hey, can I go to school with you today?
Sure can.
All right. Well, thank you for picking up all my children. Let me ask y'all something. Is everybody happy?
So grateful to the Lord that I've been given 3 children who have brought me a lot of joy. And I'm excited about the prospects of my grandchildren. And I wish, I could turn the clock back and have another experience of being a father. I would do things differently. I couldn't expect anything more out of life in the experiences I've had. Y'all are sweet, sweet children. You make life worthwhile. I love you.
Now, Truett, if you talk with him, has this homespun folksiness about him. That may be the only thing about Truett that people might misjudge. He is very bright. As a matter of fact, I think he's a genius. I think it would take a genius to do some of the things he's done. To invent the chicken breast sandwich that we call Chick-Fil-A of itself is that. To invent the kind of business system that we have. To be able to attract the kind of people that he does, to do the things he wants to do. To start things that other people can't even visualize, such as his WinShape program with the foster care and the Camp WinShape and the WinShape scholarship program. These are not things that ordinary people think up.
Mother would be so proud of him. Not that he's a rich man, but what he does with his riches.
Hope and praying to goodness that I can have the same kind of influence on my children that Dad and Mother had on us. To carry on the message of what a happy home is really all about and trying to recreate that of love and respect for each other, for each member of the family. To carry on a message of good business ethics and how to operate a business on biblical principles. How to use that business as a platform to touch the lives of other people. Carry on a message of how to be a faithful steward of all that God's entrusted.
I think I would like to be remembered as kind, generous, loving, faithful, dependable, person with integrity. I would hope that I'd have had a positive impact on a lot of people.